Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So glad you're here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to get into this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to start by doing something for me. I want you to think back to, I don't know, when you were maybe 10 years old.
Okay, 10.
Yeah, 10. Just think about how you viewed the adults in your life at that age. You know, your parents, your teachers, the neighbors.
Oh, they were basically gods.
Right. They seem to have this secret manual for the universe. I remember looking at adults and thinking they just naturally knew how to pay mortgages or drive cars on the highway or handle medical emergencies. And they made these huge, sweeping life decisions with what looked like just absolute, unshakable certainty.
Oh, yeah, totally. The confidence was blinding.
Exactly. But today, we are diving into a piece of source material that completely shatters that illusion. It exposes this, well, it's terrifying, but also strangely liberating truth about growing up. And that truth is just that nobody actually knows what they're doing.
Nobody. Not a single person.
Right. And what's really wild is the source material we're using to unpack this.
Yeah, this is the best part.
It's not some, dense philosophical treatise. It's actually a conversational text originally designed as an English learning dialogue.
Which you would think would just be like ordering coffee or asking for directions to the library.
Right. Hello, where's the train station? But instead, this dialogue breaks down all these anxieties and hidden truths about becoming an adult. And our mission today is to extract those unwritten rules of adulthood from this text. We're going to explore how it uses specific English expressions, not just as vocabulary to memorize for a test, but as actual vital conceptual tools for surviving modern life.
I love that. Using language as a psychological survival tool.
So let's unpack this. Let's start with that initial idea, the illusion we all had as kids.
Yeah, it really is the great adult delusion. I mean, we spend our entire childhood assuming that adulthood is basically synonymous with certainty. You think that one day you're going to cross this invisible threshold, maybe when you turn 18 or 21.
Or when you get your first real paycheck.
Exactly. You think a switch is going to flip and you'll just understand how the world works.
You'll just suddenly know how to fix a carburetor.
Right. Or you'll know exactly where your career is going, or you'll know how to navigate, I don't know, a really messy interpersonal conflict at the office. But the reality we're unpacking today, which is the core realization that hits pretty much everyone in their 20s or 30s, is that the adults you looked up to were just winging it.
They were entirely winging it, and they were probably just as scared as you are now.
Oh, absolutely. And the text introduces this really critical phrase right away. The phrase is learning as you go.
Learning as you go.
Yeah. And when you really look at that concept, it's the perfect antidote to that childhood illusion of certainty we were just talking about.
Because it implies motion. You aren't learning before you go.
Exactly. It shifts the entire paradigm of how we think about knowledge and age. It acknowledges that you don't get the knowledge downloaded into your brain before you start the task.
Like the Matrix. I know Kung Fu.
Right? It doesn't work like that. The knowledge is entirely a byproduct of the experience itself. You reach a certain age, maybe you get your first real apartment, or you get promoted to your first management position, and you suddenly realize that the people above you,
The people you report to.
yeah, these supposed bastions of wisdom, they are just trying their absolute best with incredibly limited information. There is no secret knowledge.
It makes me think about the transition from childhood to adulthood like a shift in theater.
Yeah.
It's like going from a highly scripted play to just pure, unadulterated improvisation.
Oh, I like that. Say more about that.
Well, think about childhood.
Yeah.
In childhood, you know your lines. You have a script. You know exactly where to stand on the stage. The adults around you are basically the directors telling you exactly what the next scene is.
Right. Wake up, go to school, finish your math homework.
Go to soccer practice, eat your vegetables, go to sleep. It's highly structured. But
Yeah.
adulthood, the script is just gone. Someone sets it on fire, you step onto the stage, and someone throws a random prompt at you.
Like a sudden layoff.
Yes. A sudden layoff or a broken water heater flooding your basement or, I don't know, a global pandemic. And there's no director to look to. You just have to make a decision, see what happens, and adjust your performance in real time.
That psychological shift from the script to the improv stage, it is massive. And honestly, we rarely prepare people for it. We spend 20 years preparing for life by studying, taking exams, getting qualifications, learning hard skills.
Memorizing facts.
Exactly. We teach people how to pass a chemistry exam or how to write a 5-paragraph essay. We do not teach people how to live without a syllabus.
No syllabus for life.
Right. And I'd actually love to pause here and ask our listener right now to think about their own life. When was the exact moment for you? When did you look at an adult in your life, maybe your own parent or a mentor, and realize, oh, wow, you are completely improvising right now. You have no idea what you're doing.
Oh, man. For me, it was watching my dad try to figure out a complex medical bill when I was about 12.
Oh, those are the worst.
They are.
Yeah.
It looked like it was written in a different language. And I remember looking at his face, and I saw this flash of just genuine confusion and frustration.
Which is startling to see in your parent.
It really is. It was a mix of terrifying, but also weirdly comforting.
Comforting. How so?
Well, because if he didn't have it all figured out,
Yeah.
if he was just staring at this piece of paper, completely baffled, but he still managed to keep a roof over our heads and raise a family all those years. Maybe my own confusion wasn't a sign of failure. Maybe being confused is just the baseline state of adulthood.
It's highly comforting once you accept it. But initially, losing that script, losing the director telling you where to stand, it creates a profound sense of vertigo for young adults. Because in school, everything is linear.
Right.
You have a schedule printed out for you on day one. You have rubrics. You know exactly what success looks like. It's objective. Get an A, pass the class, move to the next grade, graduate.
There's a finish line.
Yes. But when you enter the adult world, that entire structure just dissolves into murky waters. There are no grades.
So if everyone is improvising and the rigid structure of childhood is completely gone, that leaves us with total freedom.
Total freedom.
And intuitively, I mean, you would think that freedom would be liberating. Freedom is what every teenager dreams of, right?
Oh, yeah. Choosing your own job, living where you want.
Eating ice cream for breakfast if you feel like it.
Yeah.
Staying up until 3 a.m.
The dream.
Exactly. But as the text points out, having 100 different options actually creates a massive psychological burden. And this is something I want us to really dig into. Why does having hundreds of choices make life feel harder, not easier?
It's a great question. And this brings us to a really well-documented psychological concept called the paradox of choice.
The paradox of choice.
Right. We inherently assume that more choices equal more happiness. That's sort of the American dream, right? Infinite options.
Yeah.
But mathematically and psychologically, every single time you make a choice in adulthood, you are inherently giving up another possibility.
Right. Because time is finite.
Exactly. It is the brutal reality of opportunity cost applied to your actual existence.
Right. Wow. Opportunity cost applied to your existence. That is heavy.
It is heavy. Because think about it. If you choose to pursue a career in graphic design, you are simultaneously not choosing to become a physical therapist or a lawyer or a chef.
Yeah.
If you decide to move to Chicago for a job, you are haunting yourself with the ghost of the life you might have lived if you moved to Austin or New York.
The ghost of the life you might have lived. I feel like everyone listening right now just took a deep breath because that is so true.
Right. The freedom to choose anything suddenly becomes the burden of having to mourn everything you didn't choose.
Which explains why young adults right now are experiencing such high levels of existential overwhelm. They are standing at the center of a compass where every single direction looks equally promising, but also equally terrifying.
Yes.
You take one step north and you're immediately agonizing over whether you should have gone south.
And it's not just an internal struggle either. Society actively turns up the heat on this.
Oh, society puts young adults into an absolute pressure cooker.
100%. You go to any family gathering, a Thanksgiving dinner, or a wedding, and what is the very first question you're hit with from some well-meaning aunt or uncle?
What do you want to do with your life?
What do you want to do with your life? The ultimate dreaded question.
It's the worst. Because the subtext of that question is always, please provide your 50-year itinerary immediately.
Right.
As if you were supposed to have reviewed all those hundreds of choices,
Yeah.
calculated the exact trajectory, and settled on a singular, definitive answer by the time you're 22.
It's an impossible demand. And this is where we see certain English phrases from the source material acting as vital defense mechanisms.
Okay, let's look at the vocabulary here.
Yeah, so when someone responds to that pressure cooker question by saying, I'm still figuring things out, or I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah, I've said that a million times.
We all have. And they aren't just making small talk or being evasive. That phrase is a psychological shield.
A shield. I love that. How so?
It is a way of actively resisting that societal demand for immediate certainty. When you say, I'm still figuring things out, you are giving yourself permission to exist as a work in progress rather than a finished product.
You're rejecting the timeline trap.
Yes, the timeline trap.
Because we all construct these completely arbitrary timelines in our heads, don't we?
Oh, constantly.
It's like, okay, by 25, I need to have this job title. By 30, I need to be making this salary. By 35, I need a house and 2 kids.
And a golden retriever.
Exactly, the whole package. But if we go back to the improv scene analogy for life, adapting means accepting that discovering a new passion at 30 or entirely changing your career path at 40, it isn't a failure to meet a deadline.
No, not at all.
It's just the natural process of figuring it out as you go. You're allowed to change characters if the current scene isn't working for you anymore.
And we desperately need to normalize that. Changing your mind isn't failing. But it's not just our professional paths or our careers that require this constant active navigation. The conversation we're exploring today highlights another massive tectonic shift in adulthood that almost nobody warns you about.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. It's the complete restructuring of our social lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
The changing landscape of relationships. Because the architecture of friendship completely changes when you become an adult.
It's night and day.
It really is. Think about it. When you're young, making friends is almost entirely a byproduct of proximity and forced shared schedules.
You're just geographically trapped together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are in school, you literally sit next to someone for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You complain about the exact same math homework assignment, you eat lunch at the same time, and boom, you were best friends.
It's automatic.
It's completely automatic. You don't have to schedule a meeting or risk anything emotionally to become friends. It is just the water you swim in.
But then you graduate.
And the water dries up.
Right. The environment shifts entirely. Adult life becomes highly siloed.
Siloed, yeah. That's the perfect word for it.
You commute to work often alone in your car or with headphones on a train. You go to an office where everyone is in a different life stage. You go home, you manage your responsibilities, you cook dinner, you sleep, and you repeat.
The daily grind.
You no longer have that built-in proximity to a diverse group of peers who all share your exact schedule and have endless free time. So friendship stops being an automatic occurrence. It becomes something that requires deliberate, sustained effort.
And this is where the friction really comes in. Because to maintain or build a connection in adulthood, you actually have to do something active. The text uses the phrase, reach out.
Reach out. It's such a common phrase in business and personal English now.
Right, you have to initiate. You have to send the text message. You have to make the phone call. You have to suggest getting coffee. But the psychological barrier to doing that is surprisingly high.
It's incredibly high.
Why is that? Why is it that confident, capable adults, people who can manage entire teams at work or negotiate massive corporate contracts, suddenly just freeze up when it comes to asking an acquaintance to grab a drink on a Thursday?
It's fascinating, isn't it? It comes down to what we could call the vulnerability of intentionality.
The vulnerability of intentionality. Okay, break that down for me.
So in childhood, if you sit next to someone in class and start chatting, there's plausible deniability. You're just there. You had to sit somewhere.
Right. I didn't choose to sit by you. The teacher assigned these seats, but hey, you like Spider-Man too.
Exactly. There's no risk. But in adulthood, reaching out is an explicit statement of interest. You are going out of your way to say, I want to spend time with you, which means it carries the explicit risk of rejection.
Ah, because if they say no, they're not rejecting the seating chart. They're rejecting you.
Exactly. And people get completely stuck in their own heads, catastrophizing the potential for awkwardness.
What if things are awkward? That's a huge fear.
Huge. People think, what if they don't actually like me? Or what if they're too busy? Or what if it's been 6 months since we last spoke and texting them right now is just weird?
Which leads to this tragic irony that the text really highlights. You have millions of people sitting in their own repetitive, siloed routines. They are all craving connection. They are all feeling mildly or sometimes severely lonely. But they are completely paralyzed by the fear of making things awkward. So we basically have an entire society of adults waiting for someone else to make the first move.
Just waiting.
Just think about the drafts of text messages sitting in people's phones right now.
Yeah.
Unsent. Just because of that fear of rejection.
Oh, I'm sure there are millions of unsent texts. Hey, it's been a while. Want to grab a coffee? Just sitting there. Delete, delete, delete.
Delete. Never mind, it's too weird.
And the antidote to this, which the source material gestures toward, isn't making some grand sweeping life change. It's not about moving to a commune. It's about cultivating what we can call the micro courage of adulthood.
I love that concept so much. Micro courage.
Because we always associate courage with big cinematic moments, right?
Right. Rushing into a burning building or quitting a toxic job or moving across the world with only a backpack.
Exactly. The big stuff. But everyday adulthood requires micro courage. It's the courage to hit send on that text message to an old friend. The courage to ask a coworker you casually chat with if they want to actually grab lunch outside the office. The willingness to risk 30 seconds of mild awkwardness for the potential of a decade-long friendship.
30 seconds of awkwardness. That's a really good trade-off when you put it like that.
It is. Those tiny, seemingly insignificant decisions, those micro moments of courage, those are the actual hinges that your life and your happiness swing on.
But I'll push back a little here because it is incredibly hard to muster that micro courage when you feel like you are the only one struggling with it.
Right. The isolation makes it harder.
Because if it's so hard for everyone to make friends, and if everyone is so overwhelmed by the burden of their career choices and the paradox of choice, why does everyone else look so incredibly put together and successful?
Yes. That is the distortion of reality. And it is heavily, heavily amplified by the era we live in.
You're talking about social media.
Of course.
Wow.
We are constantly exposed to carefully curated versions of other people's lives. You log online, you open an app, and what do you see? You see the promotions, the engagements, the flawless vacations to Italy.
The perfect sourdough bread they baked from scratch.
Exactly. You are consuming a highlight reel, but you don't see their Tuesday morning panic attacks. You don't see their self-doubt or the friction in their relationships or the fact that they haven't slept well in 3 weeks.
It's the classic trap, which the source text directly addresses, comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel.
It has such a vivid framework for understanding modern anxiety.
It really is. Imagine you are sitting in the messy, chaotic editing room of your own life. You're staring at the raw footage, the mistakes, the outtakes, the bad lighting, the days you didn't get out of bed.
The stuff on the cutting room floor.
Right. And then you compare that raw footage to the final, polished, color-corrected movie trailer of someone else's life. Of course you're going to feel like a failure.
It's an inherently flawed comparison.
It's like comparing a regular apple to a CGI rendering of an apple in a movie. The CGI apple doesn't have bruises. It's perfect. But it's not real.
It's not real. And that realization completely changes how we should view success. The ideas we're unpacking today, they force us to recognize a really important duality. A person can have a wildly successful, highly visible career and still be totally consumed by imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
Someone can have a packed social calendar, they're at a party every weekend, and they can still feel profoundly misunderstood and lonely. Absolute confidence on the outside can easily coexist with crippling anxiety on the inside.
So when the text uses the phrase, everyone is fighting their own battles, it isn't just some quaint motivational poster cliche that you'd see in a high school guidance counselor's office.
No, it's a core operating principle for navigating society.
It has to be.
It really does. Acknowledging the invisible difficulties that others face is vital for having empathy for them, obviously. But even more importantly, it is a vital reminder to be understanding toward ourselves.
Towards ourselves, yeah. We are our own harshest critics.
Always. We have to stop punishing ourselves for finding life hard. Life is hard. It's inherently difficult. It's hard for everyone, especially for the people who spend all their energy trying to make it look easy.
Trying to maintain that illusion. That actually ties perfectly into another false expectation that we carry into adulthood. I think a lot of us operate under this delusion that if we just get a good enough job, or if we reach a specific income bracket, or if we finally find the right partner, our life will finally be easy.
Right. The finish line myth.
Yeah. We treat adulthood like it's this process of slowly eliminating problems, like we're checking off boxes until we reach some mythical, problem-free plateau in the clouds.
The once I arrive fallacy. We really do think we can graduate out of having problems. But the reality is that adulthood is not about the removal of problems. Problems never disappear. They simply evolve.
They evolve. Right. Because when you're 15, your biggest problem might be passing a history exam, or dealing with some high school gossip, or asking someone to the prom.
Which feel like life or death situations at the time.
They absolutely do. But then when you're 35, your problems are navigating a toxic dynamic at the office, or figuring out how to afford a mortgage in a shifting economy, or managing a sudden health crisis for yourself or your parents.
Exactly. The problems don't vanish, they just scale up in complexity.
So the focus has to shift, right? It has to shift from eliminating problems to dealing with them.
That is the crux of it. Becoming a functional adult isn't about engineering a life with zero friction. That's impossible. It is about developing the emotional and practical resilience to deal with whatever form the friction takes today.
Right.
It's an upgrade in your coping mechanisms, not a downgrade in your challenges.
Okay, but let's pause here. If the problems never actually go away, and we are just perpetually upgrading the types of crises we have to manage, that really forces a total reevaluation of what success and happiness actually mean.
It has to.
Because if your internal definition of success is a life with no problems, you are setting yourself up to feel like a permanent failure. You will never, ever achieve that.
Exactly. And this is where we see a massive shift in priorities as people age. The text touches on this subtly, but it's a huge phenomenon. In your 20s, success is usually defined by external metrics. It's about acquisition.
Right. Gathering things, resumes, titles, stuff.
It is about climbing the ladder, securing the title, making a certain amount of money, expanding your network, proving your worth to the world. But as you spend more time dealing with that constant evolving stream of adult problems we just talked about, that definition of success usually undergoes a radical transformation.
It turns inward.
Very much so.
The ideas we're exploring show this pivot toward a very specific phrase: peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Such a powerful concept in English.
It really is. And peace of mind isn't about ignoring reality or checking out. It's a specific state of being where you aren't being consumed by constant worry. It's stepping off the treadmill of acquisition and realizing, you know what? I don't actually care about having the flashiest job title in the room anymore.
I don't need to be the VP by 32.
Right. What I want is to be able to sleep through the night without grinding my teeth. I want to have the emotional bandwidth to actually enjoy a Saturday with my family instead of checking my email every 10 minutes.
But arriving at that state of peace of mind, it doesn't just happen naturally. It requires a specific, active skill, and that skill is reflection.
Reflection, meaning taking the time to actually look back at what you're doing.
Yes. You have to routinely pause and think carefully about your experiences and extract the actual data from them. Because if you don't reflect, you will just keep running on the momentum of your 20-year-old self's goals.
Oh, wow. Running on the momentum of your 20-year-old self, that is dangerous.
It is. You'll keep chasing the promotion without stopping to ask if the promotion is actually making your life any better. Adulthood is much less about having all the right answers and much more about becoming better at asking yourself the right questions.
Questions like, are my priorities still serving me?
Exactly.
Why am I actually pursuing this goal? Is it for me or is it for my parents? Am I comparing my behind the scenes to their highlight reel again? It's a constant audit of your own motivations.
An audit, yes. That's a great way to put it.
But let's be honest, letting go of the need for definitive answers and just living in the questions, that is terrifying. Humans are biologically wired to crave certainty.
We hate the unknown. We absolutely despise it.
We want guarantees. We want a formula that says, if I put in X amount of effort, I am guaranteed Y result.
Right.
Like in a video game. I hit the tree enough times, I get the wood.
Right.
But when we don't have that guarantee in life, we torture ourselves with the what ifs. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I choose the wrong path and waste 5 years of my life?
It is a desperate battle for control in a world that is fundamentally inherently uncontrollable. And the only antidote to that spiraling anxiety is to ruthlessly narrow your focus to the things that actually fall within your circle of control.
Which, spoiler alert, is an incredibly short list.
It is a shockingly short list. When you really get down to it, what can you control? You can control your actions, your attitude, your level of effort, and how you treat people.
That's pretty much it.
That's it. You cannot control macroeconomic trends. You cannot control whether a company decides to downsize and eliminate your department. You cannot control what other people think of you. And you absolutely cannot guarantee the outcome of your hard work.
Right. You can design the perfect plan, execute it flawlessly, do everything right, and the universe will still throw a wrench in it.
A massive wrench. Which brings us to another phrase from the text, the concept of going with the flow.
Going with the flow. Okay, I want to make a critical distinction here because I think a lot of people misinterpret that phrase completely.
Oh, they do. They think it means giving up.
Exactly. They think going with the flow means passive surrender. It doesn't mean you just lay on the couch, abandon all ambition, stop paying your bills, and just let life happen to you.
Not at all. Active adaptation is very different from passive resignation.
Yes.
Think about it like the difference between relying on a physical paper map versus using a GPS app like Waze or Google Maps.
Oh, I love this analogy. Let's expand on this.
So if you're navigating life with a paper map, you have a rigid, fixed plan. You highlight the route in yellow marker, turn left at Main Street, right at Oak. But if you hit a sudden road closure or a massive traffic jam or a bridge is out, the paper map is completely useless.
You're just stuck.
You are stuck, you are frustrated, you're banging on the steering wheel, and your plan is ruined because the paper map can't adapt.
Right. It doesn't know there's construction.
But if you are going with the flow, you are operating like Waze. You still have a destination, you still have ambition, you still want to get somewhere, but you are constantly taking in new data and recalculating the route in real time.
And when Waze says recalculating, you don't just put the car in park and cry on the side of the highway.
No.
You might be annoyed, but you just take the next exit and route around the obstacle. You stay fluid.
You stay fluid. You accept that the terrain has changed.
And that fluidity, that ability to recalculate without losing your mind, that leads us right into one of the most profound illusions we have to dismantle. The illusion of the destination.
Oh, yes. The destination illusion.
We have this deep-seated habit of thinking, once I achieve X, I will finally be happy.
The conditional happiness.
Yes. Once I graduate, I'll be happy. Once I hit that salary bracket, I'll be happy. Once I find a partner, once I get married, once I have a kid, my real life will finally begin.
We treat happiness like it's a coordinate on a map, like it's a physical place you can drive to and just park your car. But the reality is, once you reach that coordinate, the credits don't roll.
There's no fade to black.
No. The movie keeps playing, you get the dream job, you pop the champagne, and the very next day you still have to wake up, answer annoying emails, pay your electric bill, and unload the dishwasher.
The dishwasher never stops.
Never. The horizon line constantly recedes. The minute you reach a goal, a new goal appears.
Because happiness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of traveling. It's a method of experiencing the present moment. If you are perpetually living in the future, if you are always telling yourself that your real life will begin once the conditions are absolutely perfect, you are going to entirely miss the actual, messy, beautiful experience of your own life right now.
You miss the journey completely. And this realization usually prompts people to do a little time travel in their heads. It makes you think about what advice you would give to your younger self.
Oh, for sure.
Knowing everything we just talked about, knowing that there is no script, that certainty is an illusion, that you have to recalculate like Waze, and that the destination is a mirage. What is the most liberating thing you can realize? What would you tell yourself?
I think the most liberating piece of advice is to just stop agonizing over having it all figured out. Because truly, nobody does. Not your parents, not your boss, not the people on Instagram, and equally important, do not be afraid to change your mind.
Say more about that, changing your mind.
Well, we often treat changing our minds as a failure of conviction. Like we gave up. If you study biology for 4 years and then decide you want to be a writer, society kind of treats that like you made a mistake. But changing your mind isn't a failure. It is evidence that you are learning.
Yes.
It means you are interacting with reality, getting new data, and updating your Waze app, rather than stubbornly clinging to an outdated paper map just because you spent a lot of time highlighting it.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it, the sunk cost fallacy of life. And tied to that, I think another piece of advice I'd give is about the relationship between action and confidence.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It's massive. So many young adults are paralyzed because they are waiting for the perfect moment to feel confident before they make a move.
Yep, I'll do it when I'm ready.
Exactly. They think, I'll apply for that senior position when I finally feel confident enough in my skills, or I'll initiate that difficult conversation with my partner when I feel brave enough.
Or I'll reach out to that potential new friend when I feel completely secure that they won't reject me.
But that completely misunderstands the sequence of human psychology. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. Confidence is a byproduct of action.
You don't feel confident and then do the scary thing.
Right. You do the scary thing, you survive it, the world doesn't end, and then the confidence arrives. You learn by doing. The action must precede the feeling.
Action precedes feeling. It is a fundamental rule of adulthood. You have to step onto that improv stage and just deliver a line before you can figure out what the scene is even about.
It really is a masterclass in shifting your perspective. I mean, just look at the arc of what we've covered today.
That's a lot.
We've gone from shattering the childhood illusion of the adults who supposedly had it all together to navigating the overwhelming paradox of choice and the timeline trap.
To finding the micro courage required to build adult friendships when everyone is terrified of rejection.
Right. And ultimately, it all leads to redefining success, not as a lack of problems, which is impossible, but as a state of active, peaceful resilience.
Because the ideas we've explored today from this source material, they aren't just vocabulary lessons or passing observations. They are practical, psychological philosophies for navigating an unscripted life.
Absolutely. They are survival tools.
And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave everyone listening with one final thought, just something to chew on.
Let's hear it.
So we talked a lot about how problems never actually go away. They just change form and upgrade in complexity as we age. If adulthood is truly just an endless, evolving series of challenges without a magical, problem-free destination at the end, maybe the goal isn't learning how to eliminate all our problems.
Right. If the problems are absolutely guaranteed no matter what you do, maybe the only real choice we have left is deciding which problems are actually worth having.
Which problems are worth falling in love with. It's a completely different way to look at the friction in your life. Something to think about as you navigate your own unscripted scenes this week. Thank you all so much for joining us on the deep dive, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.